and welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you're a subscriber. My name is Jada Brown, and I am a real estate consultant and property management expert. And in today's video, I am going to teach you guys how to combat unauthorized occupants. And you guys know what I mean. The ones who don't live there, but yet they're up at the office making crazy demands. The ones that you have no idea who they are, that you just see them around all the time. We are going to get rid of those unauthorized occupants. So if this video sounds helpful to you, make sure you subscribe and let's get into the video. I'm Jada Brown, and today I'm going to teach you about real estate. So the very first thing that I would implore all landlords to do is to educate yourself. That is the best thing that you can do. A lot of us give a lease out and we don't even know what the lease says, right? We just say, okay, here's your lease, sign it, and that's it. But there are so many tools for a landlord written in your residential lease. So I would implore you all to take one afternoon and just read it like a book, take notes, and understand what is actually documented in your lease. Being with my coworkers or the leasing consultant of the property that I'm working at, I tell them the same thing. Hey, take this afternoon and read the lease and come back to me if you have any questions. And every single time they come back after they read the lease, they're like, wow, we're really not responsible for anything but providing a clean and safe place for residents to enjoy. And I'm like, exactly. So don't think that you have to deal with disrespectful tenants or them not paying their rent on time. You don't have to. So read the lease, understand what's in the lease. If it's something that you don't understand, ask your property manager, ask your real estate lawyer, ask someone who understands the lease inside and out so that you know what you're responsible for and what you're not responsible for. So as you guys can see, I have my laptop here and I want to go to this residential lease contract. This is a sample of a lease that I have here in front of me. This is for the state of Virginia. And I'm going to read this to you guys. And the part of this lease is called occupancy of the leased premises. And this is about unauthorized guests, okay? So the lease reads, the leased premises may be occupied solely by residents. No other persons may occupy or in any way reside in the leased premises in excess of either 15 consecutive days or more than twice that number in any 12-month period. Otherwise, such persons shall be deemed to reside in the leased premises in violation of this agreement. Residents acknowledge that allowing unauthorized occupants to reside in the leased premises shall be deemed a material and incurable breach of this agreement and shall entitle owner to serve residents with a notice terminating the tenancy. All changes in occupancy require owner's prior written consent. If owner consents to any occupancy change during the term of this agreement, a new residential lease contract or an amendment to this agreement must be executed. Any assignment or subletting without owner's prior written consent shall be void and may, at owner's sole discretion, terminate this agreement. Owner's acceptance of rent from any person not identified as a resident or an unauthorized occupant shall be deemed to be the payment of rent on behalf of residents and shall not constitute owner's consent for said person to occupy or reside in the leased premises. Plain text. If you have a guest, it's okay as long as they're not there for more than 15 days consecutive days of the month or more than twice that number, which is 30, in any 12-month period. Simple. So if someone is staying in your unit, your property, you can say, hey, this is not allowed. Simple. I know we got some great things that we're learning in this video, but I want to take a moment and tell you guys to subscribe. If you're watching this video, you need to subscribe. It's free, it takes 1 second, and you help grow this content of my page. So make sure that you guys subscribe to this YouTube channel. Now, back to the video. So you have to remember that unauthorized occupants, it's a no-go. Because number one, when your resident actually applied to occupy your property, they had to undergo applicant screening, which means that you proved that they could afford to live in your property. You prove that their credit is up to the credit standards of your property, and you also prove that their background is acceptable to lease your property as well. So if they're having an unauthorized occupant reside in the property that you own or you're the manager for, you really have no idea who they are. They could be criminals. They could have a very bad credit score. They could damage your property and you would have no one to hold responsible for except for the resident. I mean, they could do a lot of damage. So it's best that anyone who is residing in a property longer than 15 days, they have to be on the lease. They have to fill out an application and undergo the same screening standard that all other residents have gone through. The best way to combat unauthorized occupants is to just simply have a conversation with your resident. Let them know that, hey, here's your signature on this contract, okay? You're legally obligated to follow this contract, or I will have to evict you. But it says it clear as day. 15 consecutive days in 1 month or more than twice that number in any 12-month period. And depending on what your lease agreement says, point that out to your tenant and let them know, hey, your guest has to go. They can't be here longer than 15 days in 1 month. Now, usually that works. A lot of the times, residents will sign this lease agreement and they really have no idea what is in it, just like you probably don't know what's in it. And they're like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Okay, they'll come over less. The next thing is, if that resident says, okay, actually they need to live here, they're going to be here longer than 15 days in 1 month, then the next thing you say is, all right, if that is the case, they need to do an application, and you would give them your application, whether you send it digitally, they do it online, or if they have a paper application, have them fill out that application, pay whatever application fee that you charge, and you go through the same process that you went through with that resident that you do with the unauthorized guest. They fill out the application, you screen them for their credit, rental, and background check, and then if they pass, then you send them a lease amendment, and they're added to the lease, or you do a new lease contract, and that way they're held to the same standard as the original leaseholder. If they fail, they can't live there. Simple. So like I said, most of the time, having that conversation with that resident and letting them know, like, hey, I've noticed you have a guest here. They need to be added to the lease, or they can't be here longer than the prescribed time in your lease agreement. They'll understand, and they'll either cut back on the time that their guest is over, or they'll add them to the lease. But as we all know, sometimes you'll have that resident who really pushes your button, and you have to take a next step, which is sending them a notice that they have violated their lease agreement. Now, I don't know all 50 states and what notices they have. In the state of Virginia, we'll send a 2130-day notice to either cure the violation or quit the lease agreement, which means that we're sending you a notice to either have your guests stop coming over or we're going to evict you. So just depending on your state, you need to research what notices that you all send for violations of lease agreements, and you need to send it and let them know. Either stop having your guests coming over so much or add them to the lease agreement. Or we'll have to take steps to legally evict you from the property. This video was so graciously sponsored by me, by Real Estate Closet by SS. So if you guys notice my shirt, it says Talk Real Estate to Me. It's super cute. It comes in many colors, and it's available for purchase on my Etsy page, Real Estate Closet by ss.etsy.com. I also have this really cute key necklace. If you guys are a home girl or a home boy and you want some gear to match your profession, go ahead and head to my website. So the last time I did a story time, you guys really liked it. So I'm going to do another one about a time when we had unauthorized occupants at a community that I worked at. So if you watched the last video that I did, a storytime video, it's when I almost got shot. And if you haven't watched it, it's hilarious. I'm going to link it in the description box below. But the same community, just so many problems with this community. So the same community that I was working at as the assistant manager, if you guys have ever worked in a tax credit community, then you know at the time of renewal, you have to recertify that resident, right? So this particular household, this was their second year renewing, which meant they had to do the full recertification process. That means I'm looking at your income, I'm looking at your assets, the occupants, ensuring that you're not over the income limits for, you know, how many people are in your house, etc. So there's this, I'm going through the renewal process and I'm like, okay, they need to renew this particular household. For this video, let's say they're apartment 330. So apartment 330, they need to renew. Now, when they actually did the application process, I wasn't working there at the time. So I'm only used to seeing this one lady in her gold car with her 3 kids. I don't really know who they are. They pay their rent with the drop box. I just see them sometimes when they're passing by the office, but I really don't have that much of a connection or relationship with this particular resident. So I call up the number that we have for them and I'm like, hey, you know, it's time for you to renew. I put the notice on your door. I don't know if you got your renewal reminder, but you need to renew. So the woman says, oh, well, I'm not ready to renew right now. And I'm like, okay, so when will you be ready? If not today, tomorrow, next week, Monday, when are you going to renew or are you moving out? She's like, well, I'm not going to move out, but I'm not ready to renew. I'll let you know when I'm ready. And I'm like, well, it actually doesn't work like that. You need to let me know, like, within this week when you want to renew. Your renewal is up, right? It's time for you to renew. When are you going to renew? That's it. There's no month to month in low income housing, ma'am. You cannot go month to month. You have to renew or you have to move out. So anyway, she's like, okay, I'm going to renew. So she comes up to the office. This is the same lady that I'm thinking is the actual occupant. So I'm like, hey, Madam So-and-so, thanks for coming up to the office. Let's start this process. I'm going to need a copy of your license. I'm going to need, you know, your pay stubs if you have a job, your government benefits verification letter, whatever you have for your income, I'm going to need that. And she's like, oh, I thought I just was supposed to come up here and sign my lease. And I'm like, well, this is your second time renewing. Actually, we're going to need all this information. So she's like, oh,
I can't believe you asking me for all of this. I ain't never have to do all this. Usually I just come up to the office and I just sign my lease. I can't believe you got me doing all this.
And I'm looking like, what? Is she really doing all this? You came to live here. We never said come live here. You came to live here. So if you want to live here, this is what you have to do. So I'm being professional and I'm like, well, ma'am, maybe you lived at a market rate or a conventional property before where they can just generate the lease and have you sign it on the computer. Unfortunately, this is not the type of community that you're living at anymore. And according to what you signed before, you will give us all the information that we need if you want to continue living here. So she's like,
oh, well, I'm gonna have to think about that. I'm gonna have to weigh my options because I ain't finna be signing all this paperwork and y'all got me messed up, blah, blah, blah. So I'm
like, okay, well, take a few days and let me know if you find somewhere else. If you want to renew, please let me know. I have to put your apartment, on the available online and, whatever. So just let me know if you want to renew. Guys, she comes back later the next day and she's like,
well, I just want to let you know that I'm not even on the lease. I'm not even on the lease. This is my sister's apartment, and she up the road right now, and I'm just watching out for her kids.
And I'm like, what? I'm like, what did she just say to me? So I'm over here discussing your lease options, your renewal options, income, and you're not even the person on the, I'm like, so then I'm looking through their documents and I'm looking at the driver's license, everything matches. I'm like, it's the same lady. Turns out that they're twin sisters. One of them is in jail. This is the one who is actually the leaseholder. She's in jail, and her twin sister is living in the apartment and taking care of the lady's kids. And I'm discussing the options with her because she looked like the woman in the file that I have on my desk, but turns out they're twins. So I'm like, okay, madam 330. I hear you and I understand what's going on, but you have to be on the lease if you're going to be occupying this apartment. There's no other way. So she's like, well, I don't know about that because I got my own place and I ain't trying to be up on this lease. And I'm like, well, ma'am, you've been here over the 14 days. If you want to continue helping your sister, then you have to be on the lease. So we go through this whole thing. She's cursing me out, whatever. I'm like, okay, you have to be on the lease. So I give her our paper application and I'm like, bring it back tomorrow. Let's get you on the lease. We'll just do a, lease addendum and we're going to add you to the lease. So she brings back her application and I screened her. And this woman is a hardened criminal. Okay, she failed in credit, rental, background was so awful. It's like she just got released from homicide and double murder and all this stuff. And I'm just like, so you and your twin are just some real criminals. And I'm like, okay, so not only you're not supposed to live there, you're unauthorized, your sister went to jail, you're living in there, but yet you have a house, but yet you failed our screening. I'm like, you just have to move out. You just have to move out. And if you don't want to move out, then we're going to have to evict you. But it's time for your renewal term. You have 60 days. Just move out. Because at this point, you are not supposed to be there, ma'am, and we will evict you. So anyway, that's my story time about unauthorized occupants. And because she did move out, and she sent me an email.
And she was like, dear Jada, you are going to hell. I wish bad things for you and your future children and their children. You put out a good person. I was just trying to help my sister, and now we're homeless, and I have nowhere to go, and neither does her children. And I hope you go to hell.
And I was like, thank you for your kind words. Have a great day. Because at the end of the day, like, I'm just doing my job. You're the one that is doing some illegal stuff. So anyway, that is my story about unauthorized occupants. They can be a pain in the butthole. So I hope you all enjoyed the content of this video about unauthorized guests. If you did, make sure to subscribe. And if you are working in the property management industry, send this video to your fellow property managers because they can probably really benefit from the content of this video. So with that, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you in my next video on Wednesday. Bye.